Imagine a guy who just doesn't know when to quit. That's King Bakori for you. He's back for round 3, trying to destroy the country again with the government's help. But this time, he's about to feel KUMA's rage. And trust me, it's not gonna be pretty. Little KUMA remembers when he fell flat on his face chasing a bird. And after his dad begged to free his wife and son because he's the only one with buccaneer blood. After a few whippings for stopping work to scratch his butt. And finally, his dad turning into a human jerky. He wakes up with Ivankov saving him from being captured by the other slaves. The human hunt had begun, and everyone was running for their lives. The celestial dragons earned points for killing rabbits, and the winners got sweet prizes. Garling tells the kids to learn from the master and shows them how it's done. But the others are like, "We're not letting you take all the credit," and they start shooting at everyone in sight. The fugitives couldn't believe they were being treated like toys. Ivankov says they're going to carry out this operation, no matter the cost. But up on the cliff, they were being watched by none other than Saturn the Idiot. At the Navy HQ, a soldier asks Garp to head to God Valley. But Garp's like, "I'm not joining this little celestial dragon excursion." He tells them not to poke the hornet's nest. He says this because while the slaves were being hunted, he was chilling in paradise with some hotties playing volleyball. But as soon as he hears Roger's name, Garp drops everything and bolts to God Valley. The Rock's pirates set sail from Hachinosu, and some weaklings think they can go after them like they're actually gonna do something. Back at the Celestial Dragon's little fun and games, KUMA gets shot with an arrow to stay sharp. But they keep running for their lives. They look at the sea and the island is surrounded by Navy ships. The same Navy that should be helping them, not hunting them, right? But Ivankov says all this cruelty is going to be erased from history, a murder game to wipe out the island's inhabitants and take everything they have. In 3 weeks, each of the 100,000 rabbit fugitives will just be a statistic. And all they can think is that this is hell on earth. A guy says if they can survive 3 weeks, they'll be free. But of course, that's not going to happen. They just say they'll let the survivors go to keep hope alive, since it's no fun killing people who've already lost the will to live. On the other side of the island, Garling had already racked up 100,000 points, because he was hunting the rabbits worth the most points, and the celestial baddies were already falling for him. The kids used a shark fish man to break the shackles with his powerful jaw. Ginny was confused because she'd sent out a bunch of info, but neither the Navy nor the pirates had made a move yet. When they asked what she was doing, she just grinned and said, "I'm manipulating info." Since the prizes for this competition are a devil fruit that turns the eater into a mythical blue dragon, and I swear I've seen that lizard somewhere. The other prize is the pawpaw fruit, which lets the user send themselves and others to distant islands. So if one of them eats one of these fruits, they can escape this hellhole. To make it happen, 2 weeks ago, Ginny leaked info about this island to the outside world. So any minute now, a bunch of pirates should be showing up looking for these treasures. But that wasn't enough. One of them had to draw the Celestial Dragon's attention to make the plan work. And while everyone was in shock, KUMA said he could be the bait, since he's big and can last longer than the others. And he says he'd rather not see anyone else die. Ivankov was already hyped, yelling that no one was going to lay a finger on KUMA. They were all going to escape God Valley together. Out of nowhere, one of the Navy ships gets blown to pieces by the Rock's pirates, who had just pulled up ready to snatch those legendary treasures. And right behind them, a whole parade of pirate crews was on the way to crash this little rich people hunting party. Rocks shouted at the Navy that resistance was useless and ordered his pirates to follow him. And this was not your average crew. This was a Hall of Fame lineup, starting with Whitebeard, asking since when he became someone's subordinate. On his shoulder was little Miss Stussy, being called pathetic by none other than Gloriosa, the original savage from Amazon Lily. Right behind them was Golden Lion Shiki yelling that the treasure belongs to whoever gets there first. But Big Mom, greedy as always, said she wanted both of them. Classic Linlin, still on that all-you-can-eat mindset. Kaido said the devil fruits would be useless to her anyway, since she already had heard. And last but not least, Captain John. Yep, that Captain John. The one who hid the treasure buggy's been chasing for 30 years. Now that's one wild team. You think they could throw hands with the Straw Hats? The Celestial Dragons were already losing it over the Rock's pirates showing up, screaming that if anything happens to them, the Navy is toast. At Marine HQ, someone asked how the pirates even found out, since this event was supposed to be top secret. But while they were freaking out, guess who pulled up next? The Roger Pirates. Roger himself rolled up with Rayleigh and Gabon, ready to make the Celestial Bastards regret ever being born. Garling barked orders to gather the troops and protect the dragons, and the other Holy Knights were roasting the Navy, calling them a bunch of useless clowns. There were legendary pirates everywhere, and the kids had to grab the treasures before someone else did. One soldier said with Rox and Roger both there, they would not last long, but backup had just arrived. Garp came in yelling, demanding to know where that damn Roger was. The Navy celebrated like their Uber Eats order just showed up. Celestial dragons were scrambling for cover while two little punks were cleaning out the treasure stash. They snagged both devil fruits, and KUMA didn't even know he had to eat them. But of course, happiness never lasts long for broke folks, and Big Mom dropped in like a Macy's parade balloon, holding Ivankov by the neck. She shouted that she almost lost the fruits to those brats. She tried grabbing the other one too, but the air fryer-headed legend grabbed her leg and yelled at KUMA to just eat the damn thing already. The big guy dashed off, and Linlin yeeted Ivankov into a wall. Ivankov shouted that if even one of them survived, they'd win. So KUMA swallowed the fruit in one big bite, but the second he looked back, boom! Saturn hit him with the meanest drive-by slap of the century, telling the Buccaneer his destiny was to be a slave and die. But KUMA said it was strange how people like Saturn were born to be important, while people like him were born to be shackled. And he said if he had any power like Nika, he'd use it to save as many broken souls as he could. Saturn replied, that's exactly why people like KUMA had to be wiped out. While Rox and Roger were clashing for the treasures, the whole incident was fading into history's shadow, like it never even happened. Sometime later, back in the Sorbet Kingdom, Ivankov asked, is that all they're going to tell about Garp's heroic deeds? And said that so-called journalist Morgan's was trash. Nobody had a clue what actually happened on that island after they escaped. Ivankov asked how long KUMA was going to keep praying, and he said he couldn't stop thinking about all the people he could have saved. But Big Head told him to stop blaming himself, because in the middle of that nightmare, he saved over 500 lives. Ginny added that all those people cried out of pure gratitude. They said his hands were the hands of liberation, and KUMA remembered his father's words, the warrior of liberation will come. After everything, Ivankov decides to set sail and enjoy his freedom, and KUMA says he'll never forget his face. Well, with that Funko Pop head of his, hard to forget, right? Ginny says she'll stay here with KUMA until they figure out what to do. I won't even tell you what they're up to. She says now that she's 4 years older, she has to take care of KUMA. Tried chopping some wood but nearly broke her back. Then the little guy showed up to do the hard work. And after chopping everything, they were gonna sell it. No more picking through trash and stealing. Now they're gonna make some real money and eat like actual humans. After selling everything, they were starving. And then some cowboy shows up saying he doesn't know these two. They start throwing rocks at KUMA, calling him a monster and a liar for saying he's only 9 years old. But Ginny went full savage and tried to beat those little jerks up. KUMA, being the idiot he is, went to help them and took all their pain away. And as you know, he can't just send the pain away, so he took all of it onto himself. Then the little punks made a fan club for him. At night, they finally ate a real meal after years. And since Ginny eats like a dragon, KUMA would have to work twice as hard to buy food. She asks how old KUMA was when he became a slave. And when he says he was 4, she happily says, same as me. But deep down, she was crying like crazy, happy to finally be free. And KUMA was crying like a newborn, telling her to stop crying. 8 years after the God Valley incident, KUMA was now a pastor at the church, where he helped the old folks of the town, taking away all their back pain and fixing those messed up knees. The old folks were so impressed they'd line up just to be helped. One grandma says she's been going to this church since his father was the boss. She was shocked when they all disappeared out of nowhere, but she was happy that he came back, and she's sure his parents are smiling somewhere, knowing their son turned into a good pastor. Little did they know, KUMA's parents had already turned into statistics for the Celestial Dragons. The old folks couldn't stop thanking KUMA's miraculous hands and asked if he could do this during the week as well. But Ginny came in, stomping her feet, shouting that he only does it on Saturdays. She said these lazy old folks don't even pay for this and are asking for more, and told them this wasn't a hospital, so they should just leave. But the old folks cracked up. The Japanese girl said she had a dirty mouth but was so beautiful. And oh yeah, beautiful is an understatement. As for the daughter, we can't say much because she's underage. The mom, my friend, she is very hot. They said the men of the town kept asking her out, but she rejected them all because she already had KUMA. She turned as red as a tomato and told them to get out. Later, an old woman said she'd pay KUMA the most she could if she could. But it's tough to survive with the Celestial Dragons' taxes. And now, they have a new, terrifying king. King Bikori, known for being cold and heartless. So if they get sick, they can't even pay the celestial tribute. They heard about a man who got locked up and starved to death. The king doesn't give food to prisoners and still kisses the Celestial Dragon's boots. Yeah, he's a real piece of work. With this, the poor old folks are basically dead, unless they stay healthy. Ginny was holding back, but KUMA said if it's a light pain or discomfort, he could heal them every week. The asylum fugitives had no money to give, but made a carrot cake for them, and it was delicious. That night, Ginny was shaking like a leaf, while KUMA was facing a massive ball of pain. That pain was everything he took from those lazy old folks. And just like Zoro took Luffy's pain, he jumped right into it. It was so much pain the church was about to explode. He had to take it all, or else it would go back to the old folk. After absorbing it all, he was just a wreck, and Ginny couldn't stand seeing him go through this every week. Imagine now that the old folks wanted to come every day. She asks how he handles it, saying they don't even know how much he's suffering. But KUMA says it's the only way to end everyone's pain. Because if the pain doesn't go to someone else, it'll come back to the people. But the most important thing is that he's happy seeing everyone happy. He said he was going to train to get stronger, but Ginny said that wasn't the problem. But she was super happy when KUMA said the old folks gave them food. On the first bite of the ham sandwich, she was in heaven. KUMA asks if she wants to go somewhere with him tomorrow. They plan a BBQ by the river. 5 years later, everything's chill. Ginny looks like a Disney princess, and KUMA looks like an Electrolux fridge with 2 doors and ice coming out of it. While they're having coffee, Ginny looks at a rainbow and says, "Let's get married." The boy turns all red while she's throwing hearts everywhere. But KUMA gives her the cold shoulder and she's like, "What the heck? I know you love me too, and I promise I'll make you happy." He says, "I know that." But he remembers that his mom was taken out just for marrying a buccaneer, and he doesn't want the same to happen to her. He tries to change the subject by saying he saw news about the Revolutionary Army. He says their leader, Dragon, is a cool guy, and says one day he wants to go to the sea and dedicate his life to saving people too, just like Nika, the warrior of liberation. Suddenly, someone knocks on the door, and KUMA thinks it's someone wanting treatment at the crack of dawn. But it's 3 old dudes with a basket of fish they just caught. They give it to them as a gift, and Ginny throws a basin at KUMA's pot. The guys laugh, saying she's mad at him, but she's almost crying because KUMA doesn't want to marry her. 3 years later, a major incident shook the Sorbet Kingdom. All the elders were being arrested, and out of nowhere, KUMA appeared, demanding to know what was going on. He ordered the release of everyone, but the scoundrels drew their swords, questioning if he dared to challenge the royal army. The old folks couldn't move or speak without risking their lives. They asked if the young pastor hadn't heard about the new law allowing them to exploit people from the south at will. KUMA, recalling his own and his parents' experiences, questioned if they were being enslaved again. With blood boiling, the guards claimed it was the king's will, and that the southern folks would work until death. KUMA unleashed a paw-shaped blast, slamming one of the scoundrels into the wall. He followed with a flurry of paw attacks, taking down the rest without harming any civilian. The elders fled, and the guards decided that mere enslavement wasn't enough. They needed to eliminate them. KUMA then created a massive paw covering half the city, declaring he wouldn't allow it, and launched it to obliterate the king's lackey. Ironically, this played into the wicked king's hand. He believed the elderly were a burden, unable to pay taxes, and that removing them would enrich the kingdom. Meanwhile, KUMA was imprisoned and questioned why Ginny and the others were also detained. She laughed, saying she wouldn't let him fight alone, though they admitted they got beaten badly. KUMA, frustrated, slammed the ground, questioning how they could enslave others just for living in the South, highlighting the kingdom's discrimination against the poor. Ginny remarked that the king was merely a puppet of the celestial dragon, and rebelling against the country meant facing the world government. Suddenly, the kingdom was attacked by armed soldiers. They rushed to warn the king, but it was too late. The attackers were already threatening him. A large-headed man appeared, vowing not to let the scoundrel escape. Thanks to the Revolutionary Army, the Sorbet Kingdom narrowly avoided enslavement. The citizens celebrated, and Dragon noted the chaos KUMA had caused. They opened the cell door, and the Funko Pop-headed man mentioned hearing about KUMA and Ginny's imprisonment, prompting their rescue mission. Both were stunned to see Ivankov, and even more so upon recognizing Dragon, the Revolutionary Army's leader. The balloon-headed man invited KUMA to join them in changing the world. KUMA was overjoyed, and Ginny agreed to join as well. Thus, the freedom fighters, channeling the people's anger against the government, took up arms in response to the O'Hara tragedy, forming the renowned Revolutionary Army. Dragon mentioned their lack of funds, but planned to train willing recruits to fight. KUMA inquired about his combat skill, and Luffy's absentee father revealed his past in the Navy, which he left due to its lack of justice. They pledged to follow him to the end, and Dragon assured them they wouldn't regret it. Later, KUMA returned to the church to bid farewell to the elders, promising occasional visits. Time passed, and Ginny became the Eastern Forces captain of the Revolutionary Army. She joyfully sang KUMA's name, excited to reunite with his group the next day. The others envied her, as all their crushes were smitten with KUMA. Ginny told them to get real, as she was out of their league. That same day, a mysterious man appeared, and Dragon received a desperate call from a soldier reporting Ginny's abduction, caught off guard by the enemy. Upon hearing this, KUMA nearly had a heart attack, struggling to believe it. At the Revolutionary Army's secret base, the soldiers were begging the main battalion for help. Their men were getting wiped out one by one, but Ivankov said they couldn't go because they were busy transporting injured people from Goa. Then KUMA shows up saying he's going, but Balloonhead didn't want to let him go because the big bear was still a bit too wild after what happened to Ginny. KUMA wasn't having any of it though, and instantly teleported to the battlefield. He landed like a meteor, eyes full of rage, remembering when he found out Ginny was kidnapped by a celestial dragon. She was taken on a government ship to become one of those filthy creatures' wives. KUMA started throwing punches left and right, sending people flying. He used a powerful Ursa shock that sent half the city flying into the air, and with just him, he won the battle. Of course, the soldiers were celebrating, thinking the 3-year war was finally over, all thanks to the Revolutionary Army. But KUMA couldn't stop thinking about Ginny's army, completely wiped out in a surprise attack. He called Dragon, saying he was going to grab a boat and head back. 2 years later, we see a woman with pink hair on a ship with a crying child. But the girl started laughing when she touched the blue stones on her mother's face. Calling the girl Bonnie, she says they finally made it. Ivankov rushes to tell KUMA that they just got a call from Ginny. They were both over the moon hearing each other's voices. She says she made it back, and they almost set off fireworks in their ears. But then she says she's sick and was discarded by the celestial dragon. KUMA didn't get it and asked where she was. But she told him she just called to say goodbye because she wouldn't last much longer. He collapsed after hearing that, and she thanked him for all his kindness, but begged him not to come see her again. No one knew what was happening, and KUMA ran out of there, shouting that there's only one place she could come back to. Ginny told Dragon and Ivankov to take care of KUMA because he's too kind. She told KUMA she would love him forever. At that moment, KUMA was flying faster than Superman straight to their church. He barged in, asking where Ginny was, but only found her lying on the ground. He asked what happened to her, and an old woman said she came back covered in crystals. She said if Ginny was exposed to sunlight, her skin would turn blue and hard as stone. KUMA broke down crying, remembering all the moments he had with her, especially when she asked him to marry her. But while he was crying, he noticed there was also a baby crying on the ground. The villagers explained that in order to make sure her baby could live, Ginny crossed the seas full of sunlight to get here while she was still alive. KUMA promised Ginny not to worry because he would take care of her baby. That's how he became Bonnie's adoptive father, who turns out was the blood daughter of a filthy Tenryubito. After burying Ginny, he went back to living at the church. He tried feeding Bonnie with a bottle, but the old woman yelled at him for doing it wrong. She said he was going to drown the girl with his big hands. They also told him to put her to sleep in a metal cage so he wouldn't crush her with his giant body. After many tries, he finally got the bottle thing right. Then the elders started joking that Bonnie would grow up to be as hungry as Ginny. It did not take long for her to start walking and calling KUMA Daddy. And of course, the big guy cried like a baby out of pure joy. Time passed, and little Bonnie kept growing fast, eating like a construction worker and staying with the neighbors while KUMA had to head off to war again. But he always came back to keep his promise of protecting little Bonnie. He fought side by side with the Revolutionary Army and even helped train little Sabo. But one day, he came back home and saw Bonnie with the same crystal on her face as her mother. KUMA immediately boarded up all the windows, and the neighbors were like, "What are you doing, man?" He told them to shut the door and revealed the gemstone growing on Bonnie's cheek. They were about to say it was the same disease that killed Ginny, but he yelled for them to shut it, so they ran to get a doctor. But that fool did not believe sunlight made it worse and tried to take the poor girl outside to test it. Then they called another doctor who said it was not lead syndrome. She was sorry, but she had never seen anything like it. KUMA told Bonnie not to worry, that everything was going to be fine. A few days later, Ivankov was freaking out because KUMA was leaving the Revolutionary Army. And even worse, Bonnie had the same sickness as her mom. KUMA said he needed to be with her, so Dragon told him he understood, and to go live his life with no regrets. He said they would start asking doctors all over the world if there was any kind of cure. Years passed, and Bonnie turned 5, and she was already wreaking havoc on the neighborhood boys. But they were calling her a vampire and hanging outside the church since she could not step into the sunlight. One of them got drop-kicked straight to the Shadow Realm for getting too bold. KUMA rushed in, begging her to be careful. Just seeing her near the door gave him a panic attack. She called him a scaredy cat but said she did not want to see him sad. She was super upset because those bratty boys were making fun of her face gems again. She asked if she looked weird, but it was a disease, and there was nothing she could do. That is when KUMA appeared next to her and said her crystals looked beautiful, and he was sure those boys were just jealous they did not have any. Bonnie lit up right away. KUMA asked where she wanted to go once she got better. She said she wanted to visit Skypiea, but KUMA did not even know Sky Islands were a thing. She said the Sky Island is close to the sun, so maybe they would meet Nika up there. KUMA instantly started dancing like a lunatic, doing the Nika dance, and Bonnie ran up and started dancing with him. The big bear said it was going to be a blast when she turned 20 and they would go there together. And when she was 19, she said she wanted to visit Fishman Island. That night, the doctor told KUMA her illness was called sapphire scales, and he said if she was exposed to sunlight or moonlight, the crystals would keep spreading. But even if she avoided light, the disease would still grow. KUMA was in shock. He asked if there was no cure at all, saying Bonnie had to survive no matter what. The doctor told him the hard truth. Bonnie only had 5 years left to live. She would not even make it to her 10th birthday. There was still no cure for that illness. KUMA walked home in a daze, thinking this could not be real. She was growing up strong and happy. He could not accept there was no way to fix this. But when he got home, Bonnie jumped out and scared the life out of him. He told her she should be sleeping, but she said she heard something about 10 years. KUMA could not tell her the truth, so he said she would be cured by the time she turned 10. She got all excited and asked if they would travel together when she turned 10. He said of course they would. Another year passed, and the nightmare returned to Sorbet Kingdom. The elders ran to the church yelling that King Bikori was back. After 16 years, that demon had returned to haunt the kingdom again. He was threatening to burn alive everyone who was dragging the kingdom down, and that monster had already started slicing up civilians like it was not already bad enough. The village is literally on fire. KUMA's running around, saving everyone who couldn't escape the flames. The villagers are screaming, cursing the king, saying they'll never forgive him for what he did. KUMA spots a kid crying because her mom didn't make it out. Without thinking, he charges right back into the fire to get her. Meanwhile, that scumbag Bikori is talking about cleansing the city like he's some hero. Yeah, sure. Then one of his guards runs up to warn him about some angry protesters at the castle gate, shouting that they're murderers and demanding they put out the fire. What does Bikori do? Orders his guards to shoot 4 or 5 of them as an example, saying, "Anyone who dares challenge me gets the same treatment." Just as things are about to get worse, KUMA shows up, furious, and takes down the guards in seconds, causing explosions everywhere. Back at the church, people are tending to the wounded, while Bonnie waits for her dad to come back. They tell her to stay inside because of the moonlight, but she's more worried about her dad than herself. Is dad going to be okay? She wonders, but she's more concerned about the people at the castle. KUMA had already taken out all the royal guards, and the cowardly king was trying to bribe him, saying he'd give him the area he burned down, and that he cleaned up all the trash. Big mistake. KUMA remembers the time he came back carrying the girl's mom in his arms after she was roasted alive in the fire. The king tries to act tough, shooting KUMA 12 times in the chest. The problem? KUMA's body is tougher than any tank, and he doesn't even flinch. He smashes the gun with his bare hands, while the king is screaming, threatening that there will be consequences for attacking him. But KUMA's done with talking. All that anger he's been holding in, he uses it to prepare to blow the king and his entire palace sky high. This moment is remembered as the lone revolution of the Sorbet Kingdom. Back in Mariéjois, the Gorosei are trying to figure out who took down the king of Sorbet. Meanwhile, back in the kingdom, the people are celebrating and chanting KUMA's name. He's the new king of Sorbet, living in the church like a legend. Then something bizarre happens. A girl is training and people freak out because she looks exactly like Ginny. She asks why they're so surprised and says she's going to travel with her dad when she turns 10. But then, when she looks in the mirror, she freaks out and turns back into a little kid. People are like, what kind of transformation was that? Even Bonnie doesn't know. KUMA nearly faints from all the emotions. Someone suggests it's the age fruit, so they ask her to try it again, but she can't. That's when they find an old lady passed out on the ground. 2 goofballs mistake her for Bonnie. The old lady's talking to a guy who wants to speak with the king. This guy? Bulldog, the former king of Sorbet, helping KUMA run the country. And that old lady? Her mom, who somehow hasn't kicked the bucket yet. But guess what? KUMA can't catch a break. The papers are saying he set fire to a village and took the throne by force. Of course, they blame Bikori because he's got the government's backing. They're saying he'll come back to reclaim the throne. Bulldog hears about the Navy ships coming to Sorbet, and the old folks are panicking, saying they don't want to live through that nightmare again. KUMA's like, if he comes back, I'll take down his forces and whatever else he sends. But if he does, he'll become a criminal and have to leave the country. He tells Bulldog to take over the throne if that happens, and promises to protect Bonnie because the church will be in danger. KUMA tells Bonnie to behave, and he'll be back as soon as he can. But he messes up and says this to the wrong person, the real old lady, not the fake one. She hugs him, saying she doesn't want him to leave. But hey, with great power comes great responsibility. So, after all that, KUMA goes solo to defend the kingdom. He shows up like, y'all got some serious guts coming back here, and he's about to square up with not one, not two, but three ginormous Navy warships. Bakori's over there screaming, "That's the criminal tyrant who stole my throne! Take him down!" But KUMA blasts off like Buzz Lightyear with rage in his eyes and nuclear energy in his fists, and sinks all the ships in one single move like it's a pirate version of Bowling Night. After that, he dipped out to sea and officially became a wanted man. Bonnie was missing him like crazy, and the old lady told her that KUMA was a hero. But the little rebel yells that when she turns 10 and gets better, she's gonna be a pirate too, because you know, she can age herself up and all. Meanwhile, KUMA's out there traveling the world, hunting for a cure for Bonnie. He asks around if anyone knows a disease that makes sunlight dangerous, but no one's even heard of that nonsense. Some clowns even try to capture him for the bounty, but end up face down in the dirt wondering what went wrong. Still, KUMA keeps going, thinking about how Bonnie only has 5 years left max. She might not even make it to 10. One day, while out at sea, he crosses paths with the Revolutionary Army. They ask what he's doing out there, so they sit down for a drink. KUMA chilling with Bello Betty on his shoulder like it's casual Tuesday. Dragon says Ivankov and Inazuma got locked up, and jokes about how KUMA went from revolutionary to tyrant king to pirate real quick. Of course, no one there's buying the government's fairy tale. Betty asks KUMA what he thinks about her becoming the Eastern Force captain, the spot Ginny used to hold, and she wants to honor her name. KUMA gives the nod, and she lights up like a kid on Christmas. The absentee dad says Sabo, Koala, and the crew all want to see him too. KUMA would love to rejoin them, but he just can't. Not yet. Dragon says he has a lead on Bonnie's condition. He asks KUMA if he's heard of Dr. Vegapunk, and says after a recent incident, the doc is relocating to a new lab. Normally, the guy's impossible to reach, but now security is weak. KUMA asks if Vegapunk could possibly cure Bonnie, and Dragon's like, it's a shot. So KUMA thanks him, saying he was about to give up hope. But now, he's fired up again. If Bonnie gets better, promises to fight alongside them once more. Dragon tells him to let the winds of fate guide the way. Then, KUMA heads back to the Sorbet Kingdom and finds Bonnie beating up some poor guard. She says she trains every day because she's ready to hit the high seas. KUMA tells her the time has come. He packs her in a barrel and smuggles her all the way to Vegapunk's lab. The old man takes one look at KUMA and nearly drops dead. He says he's never seen anything like him. Though with that giant dome of a head, he might have actually been taller than KUMA if you count the cranium. Bonnie pops out the barrel and goes, "Dang, you really got a massive head." Vegapunk examines her and says, "KUMA's done a great job slowing down the sapphire scale disease." Then he says there might be a way to cure her, and KUMA almost has a heart attack on the spot. They celebrate like they just won the lottery. Vegapunk says he'll use a tech that even top doctors don't know yet. Stem cell magic, basically. But it'll take a truckload of time and money, almost like building a cyborg from scratch. Then, after running tests, the doc nearly loses his dentures when he finds out KUMA's a buccaneer, and those guys are wanted by the world government. KUMA says he trusts Dragon and asks what's different about his blood. Vegapunk says he doesn't have enough samples to figure it out yet, but he wants to use KUMA's DNA to create an army of invincible clone soldiers. So he offers a deal. Donate your blood and give me permission to clone you, and I'll waive all the costs for Bonnie's treatment. KUMA's like, of course I'll do it, but I need to know what you're gonna do with those clones. Vegapunk explains they'll be soldiers for the Navy, loaded with lasers, missiles, and enough firepower to turn pirates into toast. KUMA says, if one of those clones saves even a single life, then my life was worth it. Vegapunk says Dragon's gonna flip when he hears about this, but KUMA replies, if it saves Bonnie, I'd make a deal with the devil himself. And this man used to be a pastor, by the way. The doc calls him a saint, but KUMA says he's just a pacifist who wants peace. Vegapunk likes that so much, he decides to name the future warriors after it, Pacifistas. Meanwhile, that snake Saturn is over there saying clone soldiers are just weapons, and Vegapunk is wasting their potential. So he comes up with an idea so evil, it might just ruin KUMA's entire life. Bro cannot catch a break. KUMA's not chasing riches, fame, or power. All he wants is peace, and even that's being snatched away from him. If you want me to cover the next episode the second it drops, comment One Piece 1133. Smash that like button and subscribe so we can hit 1 million subs before the year ends. And do not miss the next video on your screen. It's absolutely insane. I'm out. Peace.